Hi guys, I wanted to quickly show you three different roof options that I think are worth considering for the newly increased in height area, the kitchen and the family room. I'm calling them the light touch, the medium touch, and the heavy touch options. Now here we're looking at the light touch. This was the one that I was showing you before. I think it's appropriate given the scope of the work you're considering, concerns about the total cost of the project, and really strongly based on the images you shared, which had this sort of flat gridded ceiling. Two skylights here, I think, work really nicely, as stated before. You mentioned a concern that pendants may not work at the skylight, but I think a solution like this would work where any sort of custom bar could be built and suspended, power routed through this to the individual pendants that then hang from that. If it can hang from a ceiling, it could be modified to hang from a bar. So I think this is an elegant solution for any sort of pendant array you might want to do, including the little 5.5 inch glass spheres that you already have. So I like this option, but I know you have very valid concerns about how water's going to shed away. And so what I'm showing here is conceptual. Your builder's roofer might be able to make this even better. Your roofer and your flasher, when they get up there and they actually see the skylight openings, they might be able to increase the slopes of these crickets to get the water out and away from here even faster. But when water lands in this spot or lands on this roof and starts coming down this way, it's got a clear path out and around. That's what's shown in white right now. And again, this is all conceptual, but and it's tight. This is not an ideal solution, right? But you guys know you're not in an ideal spot having to remodel the project on the fly. But this, I think, is the most cost-controlled method without really sacrificing anything on the design. Like, I love this design. First and foremost, this design is great. I think this works, right? These are the existing skylight locations at your existing roof. I think this is so minimal impact. On this side, maybe it gets a little wonky. I'd love to build another cricket over here, but there's this existing skylight at the hallway. And if we do a cricket, it's going to bisect the skylight. I think that's going to get a little weird. Maybe the builder just extends the skylight up here at the cricket. Or maybe they do something like this where we collect the rainwater into a small well that's hard piped on the roof surface and then drains into a drain pipe here. It'd be painted to match the roof right now. It's white, so it wouldn't be too terribly visible. It's not the most elegant solution, but uh, it works, engineering wise. And I think there's plenty out here that's going to be distracting to the eye and draw more attention than a hard pipe here that minimally impacts the roofing in this sun. But again, we can work on other options here. All right, so that's the light touch. Let's skip the medium touch for now. We'll come back to medium. Let's focus on, oh, and actually, shoot, let's go back to the light touch. And from the front, from the street view, what we see at eye level is just a little bit of new roofing, um, detached from the main roof. I'm not really showing anything up here. I'm not showing a new garage addition yet. We can look at that later, but this all stays relatively untouched. Again, to minimize costs. We could certainly incorporate some elements from the heavy touch or medium touch to this front facade if you like them. The two aren't necessarily, um, mutually exclusive. But let's take a look at some of the other options now from the back. So the heavy touch option starts off with an exact same similar rear elevation as the first, except I'm showing an upgraded hardwood, or not hardwood, not real wood, but a wood composite or wood-like siding material here, just to change it up a bit as a visual cue. Either or, right? So here we're showing the exact same roofing. It comes up, but instead of coming up and down as this sort of line is visually demonstrating, it keeps going up until it can come down flush with this roof plane, right? And so that eliminates most of the hog valleys, not all of them. There's still some hog valleys that remain at this roof. But again, they're not impossible to deal with. If we like keeping this window, which I do, the Hog Valley should be limited to this line rather than continuing it up and just making it further steeper. But again, we like this window here, so I say let's incorporate some Hog Valleys. But this comes down and touches the existing roof, eliminating this entire stretch of Hog Valley, which certainly is nice. But a trade-off of this is all of this extra roof comes down, and we need to do something else to the front elevation to combat all of this new mass. Without popping in these dormers here at the existing dining room library area, and one here above Jenna's new office, and this new entry feature and the garage pop out, things start to feel very, very awkward and ad hoc. You've got this long wing coming out here that's single story, then it swoops all the way up really high, very little going on at the roof. Actually, I think I would have to redo. I need to show two more skylights, one at the pantry and one at that entry hallway. Those existing skylights here need to extrude up like I did for these two. I did that so for these two, but there's two more here, so we'll see those as well. So we need to add elements in the foreground to split up this large roof mass. And of course, the chimney gets much, much taller because, again, we still need to maintain that 2-foot code required clearance from the top of the chimney to the uh, top of the roof ridge. And so while I love this look, it's a lot more cost. And it starts to get a little cumbersome here with these elements, which these roof dormers that I love expressing on the inside, centered right over the existing windows, and one more centered between them, which happens to be centered right on the fireplace here. I just think that's so wonderful, except it's not really perfect with the existing rafter location, right? There's a bit of a conflict. It gets a little bit cumbersome. And, I'm not showing the existing wood texture here, but if we want to salvage that and reuse that, it starts to beg the question of, is it worth going through the trouble of adding these elements, which would bring in even more light into your library space, which we're obviously a big fan of, but we also like the character of this existing ceiling, right? If you're flexible about this, and I can sort of maybe take a bit more of a carte blanche approach with where these rafters fall relative to these three new dormers that are centered over these windows and centered over the space between, I think this could be very, very successful. Um, I like adding one more over here at Jenna's office too, although I haven't fully mocked up the ceiling in this space, so we'll come back to that if we are liking this look. I think it's a very interesting composition. This 3, 2, 1. Again, there'll be two more over here. Um, and then this also begs the question of, if you like this approach, what roofing material should we do? Do we keep the old solar roofing where it was, and then our new roofing comes down and is a different material that transitions, or do we want to go with more of all the same? I think a case could be made for keeping the old roof as the solar tile and then switching to standing seam metal roofing everywhere else. I think those might be nice accents um, that would counter the glassy look of these solar tiles. But then again, at the back, it's more or less the same as the light touch option, and that's intentional. Now let's take a look at what I was calling the medium approach. I went back to I couldn't let go of this one idea of taking that old patio cover that we had designed, and this is so roughly done. Please ignore how sloppy this is, right? If you like this idea, I'll clean it up, of course, but the idea of taking this patio cover that we had designed, and instead of it being supported on 4 columns separate from the main house, what if it tied in together and continued through these high windows at the ceiling and just continued across into the kitchen and the family room. And we had the same wood soffit, the wood ceiling material, continuous both inside and out. I think this is pretty interesting. Um, there are some caveats to this one. In order to keep this low slope nice and clean at the front without getting too cumbersome as this roof was doing, I want to limit the ridge to be no higher than the existing ridge so that from the front we don't have to go through and add these dormer elements. We can go without them because we're not adding any major roof mass here. You know, maybe we do the garage bump out. You know, maybe you want to do like a 4-foot extension to the garage. We could bump that out with a low slope shed roof over the garage. The gable here that frames the entry a bit nicer. And that's pretty medium touch at the front. It might be worth still adding the dormers in. And we could do that still. I think I have them on this layer here. Let's see if they pop up momentarily. Yeah. Well, ignore that line in the back here, but you can see we could still add in the dormers here if we thought that was worth it to spruce up the library dining room. But from the back, the sort of maybe one negative trade-off about this is the ceiling heights are lower now because I wanted to stay constrained to this ridge. I didn't want to exceed that ridge height because then it starts to look really weird when this point starts creeping up above the ridge line. So, and at the slopes that we want to maintain to make that work and make this standing seam roof slope properly, we wind up losing, excuse how messy it is, we wind up losing the side windows here. So we lose the side windows, but the indoor-outdoor connection that we would gain by having this ceiling continue might be worth the trade-off. Now, I'm not showing it, but there could be plenty of skylights in this roof too, especially given that this would be a vaulted ceiling, meaning that the ceiling slope runs or attaches directly to the sloped roof framing. The skylight shafts will be uniform depth, right? The ones in the middle won't be taller than the ones closer to the ceiling plane. It's consistent throughout, so we can maybe not pepper the roof with skylights, but we can add quite a few to this ceiling plane in here to add a little bit of visual interest and to make up for the lack of the side lights here. But still, it's a tall ceiling height, right? This ridge height here in the center would be just about 12 feet. And at the wall's edge, it's a bit messy, but we are approximately here 9'10". I'm going to call that 10 feet. So averaging 10 and 12 feet sloped gives us an average height in here of 11 feet. You know, 10 foot or 11. What did I say? 11 foot at the edges or 10 foot? Shoot, 1 second. Yeah, 10 foot at the edges, 12 foot at the center. I think that's a decent amount of height. So those are the three options that I think are worth considering. This light touch option with a simple gable with an attic. So there'd be a flat ceiling and an attic with a simple gable with crickets all around, hog valleys to get the water out and around, but more or less keeping the existing roof as is. The medium touch option, which kind of changes up the design a bit at the back. We go now, instead of with a cross gable, we'll go with a gable that is half extended, which feels a lot more contemporary. And forgive, this needs to be cleaned up. You know, as this lowered down, this actually dropped down a little bit too. So you can see that we lost a little bit of overall height to this element. Not much, it's about 2 feet. So I have to raise that up about 2 feet to get the look back. And it doesn't feel squatty. I mean, look at these people. plenty of height. I still like the way, this needs to be studied a bit, but I still like the way the existing roof comes in underneath it. There's plenty of open space between here. I think this is worth considering. And then the heavy touch option, where it's very much like the light touch, but we just carry the roof up and back to connect to the front plane, eliminating most, but not all, of the drainage or cricket problems. Um, but with this option, because of the added mass here, I feel compelled to add the dormers to break up that roof plane. Whereas for the medium touch or the light touch, I think these elements are more optional. Although certainly I really like having um, the new garage extension like you like, and the new roof element, the new front entry porch. It feels really nice and further announces where the entry is. And I do think these dormer elements are nice, even for the medium or light touch element, so long as we're willing to explore touching the library ceiling a bit more extensively than we necessarily have to. All right, guys, let's book a meeting to talk about your thoughts on this. Thank you.